Hey, it's Debbie Potts, and I'm going into another section of my long presentation. I'm breaking it up into many conversations to have with you. A metabolic health. How can we improve ourselves today to be our best self in the future? I'm on a mission to improve how I age. So when I'm my mom's age, 83, I am able to move, travel, have all my cognitive health and muscle strength, being able to get up and down stairs and bike ride, hike, all that. So I want you to learn how simple it could be to take ownership of our health now in our 50s so we are feeling amazing as we age and not blame the aging process. So we also will talk about metabolic syndrome, a big area that most of us might not experience, but metabolic syndrome is pretty common in our society. And I think a lot of athletes might not struggle with a lot of this, but again, chronic stress impacts all efforts. So you may be doing all the right things, but still might be struggling with some of these markers as elevated waist circumference, insulin resistance, elevated fasted glucose, high blood pressure, elevated triglycerides, low HDL, looking at chronic systemic inflammation is CRP. Maybe you are metabolically inflexible, which means having weight issues, being insulin resistance. Common challenge is burning fat. And that's what I test when I do PNOE metabolism testing is look at how well do you burn fat at rest and how well do you switch to carbohydrate fuel source as the intensity increases in exercise? And are you able to switch back to burning fat? So we want to be metabolically flexible, being able to burn fat and carbohydrate. So we have good carb metabolism and good fat metabolism. If we have the opposite, metabolic inflexibility, inflammation, struggling with obesity, insulin resistance, which isn't just because of eating carbs, it could be from excessive stress, vicious cycle we get stuck in. One triggers and reinforces the other. So, as an FDN practitioner, we call this metabolic chaos. If we have impaired metabolic flexibility, this is associated often with insulin resistance, which of the two precedes is unresolved. So, what happens first, we don't know. But I know that I struggled with insulin resistance and I was very low carbohydrate. I was seriously into nutritional ketosis and not eating carbs, but exercising at very high level for racing Ironman, training for cycling events of 100-mile rides, and running marathons, as well as my day job was a personal trainer and fitness instructor running my fitness studio. So I owned it, did all the business side of it, but then I taught classes, personal train clients all day. And when you're teaching group classes, I'm not working out with them, but I'm doing circuit training and leading, but I'm moving all the time and doing demonstrations. So I was always active. Too much of anything, even exercise, is not good for you. Too much, probably low calorie, is not good for you when you are active. So we'll talk about metabolic health as a comprehensive state of well-being and metabolic flexibility. These are essential parts of being metabolically healthy. And the absence of metabolic diseases, such as metabolic syndrome. So, PNOE, we talk about this and how we can test and assess how well is your metabolic health. How well are you going to age? So, recognizing signs of poor metabolic health early on is really what I'm trying to get across here. Don't wait to get help when you already have problems. We really need to learn how to take ownership of our health today before you have red flags, before you have a lot of symptoms, because we might be able to see a few markers creeping up that in time, those are going to get worse. So let's get ahead of these big markers to give us clues of something is going on. If you don't take action now, you could be struggling in the future. So symptoms of a sluggish metabolism, we can see that when we do the metabolism testing, may include difficulty losing weight. Your exercise might feel sluggish. You don't have good endurance. You're feeling tired. You may have more cravings for sugar and starchy foods. So that gives me clues to other things as well as your microbiome, if you have candida, yeast overgrowth. So there's a lot going on and it's all connected. Several factors that lead to poor metabolic health can include not usually our population listening, but sedentary lifestyle. So lack of physical activity can slow down metabolism, making it harder to burn calories and lose weight. If you're eating diet and high processed foods and sugars, this can disrupt metabolic balance, leading to weight gain and reduced metabolic flexibility. So you could be eating a poor diet. I know that's why we started this podcast 12 years ago, because a lot of endurance athletes were training, but they're fueling incorrectly. A lot of athletes think they exercise, so they have the right to eat whatever they want. Garbage in, garbage out, though, right? So we want to look at what we're feeding ourselves with, avoiding that processed food, refined sugars, and vegetable toxic oils. Now, again, chronic stress. Long-term stress can lead to hormonal imbalances that slow down the metabolism. So if we have HPA axis dysfunction, cortisol is elevated, higher than optimal, and we have that, getting a Dutch test is a great way to see how your circadian rhythm is of your cortisol, higher in the morning and lower at night, opposite of melatonin. And that can lead to all sorts of metabolic chaos with our hormones, including sex hormones, DHEA, your thyroid. So we want to look at the whole picture. And that's why it's a really good conversation to have. If you do have low thyroid, do you have low T3? Do you have T4, but you're not converting to T3? And looking at, are you really low thyroid or is it something else? Maybe it is getting a look at how is your life? Do you have chronic stress? Because thyroid medication isn't going to fix that. So we want to look at how are your external stressors. And then, of course, quality sleep is what we want to look at. Lack of sleep can disrupt the hormones that regulate leptin and metabolism. And of course, age and genetics. We hear this all the time that the metabolic rate naturally slows down with age. Well, that's why we're fighting that gradual decline with age with the way we exercise, focusing on that strength training and sprint training and zone 2, peak fat max. And then we're working on the mobility and all that, but then we're also really hitting the protein focused meals. So meat centric meals, ideally, and getting that protein spread out throughout the day. But genetic factors can also play a role in one's metabolic health. So that's another way to look at the whole picture, is looking at a genetic report, correlating that with your blood chemistry panel and functional lab test, and PNOE metabolism testing, and really looking at how we can investigate what's going on externally and internally under the hood, so we can create that health optimization program for you. Or if we find there's some imbalances, which we often do, then we can figure out a protocol to help you regain vitality and help improve your metabolism and your metabolic health. So age and genetics, you can't really change, but we can work with them, knowing how you relate or change with age, how we can improve that with our lifestyle habits, working on stress, sleep, nutrition. Our lifestyle habits and our activity can all, of course, be changed, but age and genetics are only one part. So it really is not, there's so many other areas we can improve. So it's not something to say, oh, my metabolism's for sure going to be slowing down because of I'm getting older, but look at all these other factors that we can improve. So connecting all this together, going back to metabolic flexibility, is the ability to switch between carbohydrate metabolism, fat metabolism for energy. If we are metabolically flexible, this is connected to good mitochondrial health and thus overall metabolic health. Metabolic inflexibility is when, of course, we have the opposite, impaired ability to switch fuels. So even if you're good at burning fat, but maybe you can't switch carbohydrates because you've been so low carb, is one theory. And just as if you've been eating too many carbohydrates, you're poor fat burner. That is associated with mitochondria dysfunction and poor metabolic health. Usually the carb part. You are not efficient at burning fat. And that's what we can detect in our testing. We can also look at mitochondrial health because mitochondrial health create ATP, create energy. And so we need fat metabolism to be working at optimal level to improve overall metabolic health. But again, poor mitochondria health leads to poor metabolic flexibility, so inflexibility and more problems. So we want to look at improving our metabolic health by improving metabolic flexibility. Looking at what goes wrong, metabolic flexibility, and how Y becomes inflexible. So mitochondrial dysfunction, primary cause of metabolic inflexibility is mitochondria dysfunction. So really looking at this relationship to improve our mitochondria health, and that will help metabolic flexibility. So metabolic flexibility to improve our energy balance and overall metabolic health. How do we improve that? Let's work on how we can look at where we are now. What are your areas of opportunity? And let's figure out a plan. So when we do your PNOE metabolism testing, you're wearing the mask, we're analyzing this air you're breathing in. It's connected to this tube, and that's connected to a machine. We're going to get these markers, but I also like to look at your blood chemistry panel as well as nutritional therapy assessment. So if we can order other functional labs to get more indication of your mitochondria and your microbiome and your hormones, we can order a Dutch test, organic acids test, and a stool microbiome test. So if we look at your blood sugar regulation, glucose in A1C, but I'd rather really look at your insulin. So insulin sensitivity, looking at your body fat. Do we have, as Dr. Gabrielle talks about, not a problem of losing fat, but we need to focus on gaining muscle or losing muscle. So we want to work on body composition, looking at inflammation and blood pressures and lipids. I'm really not a fan of cholesterol, but looking at triglycerides and the LDL particle size, ApoB, and LP little a we can look at. Looking at your metabolism testing, that's where we're going to get that glimpse of your resting metabolic rate. How many calories does your body need without movement, without exercise? We are able to tell with your breath, analyze your fat to carbohydrate burning, and that will help us determine the number of calories your body burns at rest to maintain vital functions. Remember, the volume of what you breathe in to what you exhale, carbon dioxide, RER, and 0.7 predominant fat, 0.85 50-50 fat carbs, and closer 1.0 reliance on carbohydrates. So be able to see how well you're metabolically flexible you are when we do the exercise test, how well are your mitochondria producing energy, and how healthy are the mitochondria. So why is fat burning efficiency so important to track? Obviously, we just went over mitochondrial health, metabolic health, longevity, correlation between mitochondrial health, metabolic flexibility, and increased lifespan. Healthy weight. Remember, it's not about the fat, but muscle. Do you have enough muscle on board in avoiding sarcopenia as we age? So improved fat oxidation enhances metabolic health, reducing risk of obesity, insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes. And of course, chronic disease, high fat burning efficiency may lower systemic inflammation and improve overall resilience. So, cardiovascular training, figuring out your zone 2, improve mitochondrial density and efficiency, focusing on a sleep hygiene routine. So, it's quality sleep, working on a nutrient dense diet, avoiding processed foods and vegetable oils that promote metabolic flexibility. Maybe we need to go lower carb, strategic carb timing when you're doing specific workouts, and flex in and out, as that Ben Azadi talked about in his book, is having, say, one day a week, you're adding a little bit more carbs. Maybe you're going 50 grams a day carbohydrates if you're not exercising high level, and then maybe you go 100, 130 grams a day on more active days. It depends on the person, where you are at on your journey. Sunlight and exposure improves circadian rhythm, cellular functions. I'm super into having my sunrise and sunset viewing, sunlight viewing. And then, of course, avoiding processed foods. Alcohol consumption impairs mitochondria function and fat oxidation, as well as eating late night, alters metabolic rhythms and reduce fat utilization. And of course, sedentary lifestyle obviously would impact your mitochondria density and efficiency if you're not working on challenging those mitochondria. So fat burning efficiency tracking, as with PNOE, a resting metabolism test, gives us insight to your current snapshot of your metabolic health and mitochondrial function. So this way it gives us more clues to add in our investigation to address where are you right now in your journey? What are your areas of opportunity? What's holding you back from being your best self? And let's figure that out, how to implement these new habits or nutrition or exercise programming so you can get a personalized program and have some action items to work on instead of just guessing. So we always say testing and not guessing. So by addressing the lifestyle factors and improving your aerobic capacity or fat oxidation capacity and improving that metabolic efficiency point where you're burning highest point of fat to your metabolic crossover points, that zone 2, we want to improve that. So if we can enhance your fat burning efficiency, supporting your health and living a better, longer quality life. So metabolic flexibility, we can tell in your exercise training when we do your fitness test. And then we can figure out your fuel sources, switching into those higher zone 3s, zone 4, zone 5. And high intensity exercise, we should be able to see you're switching more carb metabolism. So in an exercise test, if you don't perform well at higher levels, it might give us some clues of how you're training right now or how you're eating, and really looking at the whole picture. And that's why I do a lot of intake form questions using nutritional therapy. So we want to be able to be efficient at switching fuel sources. That's a good sign of our metabolic health, mitochondrial efficiency, and of course, energy metabolism, energy regulation. So using a lumen day to day helps you in between when we do your PNOE testing. So working on using the breath meter, you breathe in and then you exhale and you blow into this small device, and that will give you something similar to what we do PNOE, an RER score. They use 1 to 5 on their device, and it'll tell you on the phone app. So you'll be able to see, are you metabolically flexible when you are eating a higher carb meal? You might go into carb burning, but do you switch back to burning fat? That's metabolic flexibility. So you can tolerate some carbohydrates and you'll shift back. But if you're not if you're inflexible, you may not go into burning fat as well, maybe more carb burning at rest. So we want to measure your metabolism and making sure your mitochondria are using carbs as fuel. You're releasing more carbon dioxide. That's when the ratio of the RER values 0.85 to 1.0 is all carbohydrate or a little higher. So looking at using lumen helps you analyze your fuel source used at rest. It's just a breath test, so it's not as accurate as doing a PNOE test that we're measuring 10, 15 minutes. So looking at your mitochondria gets a little sciencey, but really fascinating of how our cells have these mitochondria and how we'll have more and more mitochondria in our cells. So we want to improve a couple words here we'll go over a few times. I've been doing videos on this, but I think it's important because I like to understand. So mitochondrial capacity, mitochondrial density, and biogenesis. Just to review, because I go over this when people do their tests, how you can improve mitochondrial capacity is the ability of the mitochondria to produce energy through oxidative phosphorylation. And the capacity, mitochondrial capacity, is influenced by the number of mitochondria. So the more mitochondria you have in each cell, and your muscle cells can produce more ATP. So you'll be able to have more energy. A higher activity of enzymes involved in electron transport chain and Krebs cycle create more energy. Having more availability of nutrients and oxygen is required for more ATP. So we need all this to have mitochondrial capacity improvements. Then there's the word mitochondrial density. So the number of mitochondria per unit of volume of tissue, especially in the muscle cells, is what we want to get. So we want to get mitochondrial capacity, so the ability of the mitochondria to produce energy. But then we want to get the number of mitochondria per unit. So more mitochondria in each cell is mitochondrial density. Mitochondrial capacity, how much energy they can produce. So the mitochondrial density is greater production for sustained activities, so enhanced endurance and improved metabolic function, more efficient utilization of oxygen and nutrients. And then we have biogenesis. Mitochondrial biogenesis is a process by which new mitochondria are formed in the cell. This process is regulated by various factors and signaling pathways. And that's where we've talked about PG1C alpha or PGC1 alpha, AMPK, and exercise and calorie restriction stimulate pathways leading to increased biogenesis. So when we've talked about should you fast or not to improve mitochondria, this is a good point that we've talked about over the years, and that if you're exercising already a lot, you really don't need to do calorie restriction for biogenesis, creating new mitochondria. So you want to make sure you're fasting when you're not exercising. So it's, I think, either or. So mitochondrial capacity, mitochondrial density, and mitochondria biogenesis is what we want to work on. So what goes wrong, we'll talk about next time, but mitochondrial dysfunction and how we want to improve how we age. To summarize, mitochondrial health is the cornerstone of metabolic function, influencing energy, recovery, and overall vitality. So enhancing our cell health is what I'm working on, and enhancing NAD production, supporting our mitochondrial efficiency to optimize metabolic health and performance. So testing and improving our metabolism, figuring out how to eat, how to train, what to supplement with when needed, lifestyle habits. So we'll go over that next time, but super fascinating to me to connect boosting our NAD plus levels, promoting mitochondrial biogenesis with how we train, and getting rid of the dead ones. So we'll go into this next time. So let me know if you have questions. We'll go into metabolism, mitochondria, and we'll talk about more about mitochondria function as we age. So I find this fascinating, and how we can tie this in with PNOE metabolism testing, how we test all these markers, resting metabolism test, you get a big report, active metabolism test, we get an even longer report, and then put it all together. So that's what I'm doing, kind of putting the testing with my functional lab testing and assessment as an FDN practitioner, and then putting it with the information I do in intake forms for nutritional therapy assessment, and use PNOEs in person. The other are online, so you don't have to be here for that, but looking at all this. So mitochondria is what we want to focus on, I think, as we age, and how to improve the health comes from mitochondria. So we'll stop there, and we'll talk to you next time, and let me know what you want to dive into on the next rabbit hole to improve how we age so we are fit and healthy from the inside out as we get older. So recreating yourself today so you are the best self you can be in the future. That's my goal. So hope you're on the same path as I am.